build a compelling drawing sometimes in grayscale and color seem. Oh yeah, so I don't think color typically ruins it. Gosh, I mean it depends. So you can. So if you, I think a thing that I do a lot is I will start with color. So even though, but I think in grayscale. So what I mean is values are still typically the most important to me. But I might start with some colors that I like. You know, maybe some warm colors, some cool colors. So yeah, okay, here's some warm and cool colors, right? I have warm, cool. I also have dark and light, right? So I have everything in my painting that I need to make a painting. I can just turn my screen to black and white, right? So here I hit, if you're on Windows, you can hit Control Windows C. And if it's not doing anything for you, it's because first, here's a little technical thing. If you go in here and you hit color filters, you can type it in right there, color filters. I swear I need like a thing. Anyway, so if you go to color filters and you're on Windows, there will be this option here. It says use color filters. Turn on color filters, and you can toggle it, but you have to allow it. You have to click it first. And once you click it, you can toggle your screen to black and white. And what's really nice about this is because it's not in the program, you can still color pick, right? So if I color pick, look at the color slider moving, right? It moves around because the colors, it's not picking gray, right? So once you get your basic values, you can actually just ignore your colors, right? Once you pick your basic colors, you don't have to worry about your colors, right? I can do an entire painting in grayscale. I can plan my painting in grayscale, and I'm using the same colors that I was before, right? And it's not going to be perfect. So sometimes I'll do stuff like that. I constantly check my values. I don't typically, I do like to see what I'm doing, but as like if you're beginning, right, you can start, you know, again, maybe you're doing an environment and you have your, you know, something like this. Again, maybe there's a light here. I'm gonna just make a quick painting, right? So here's your little rocky environment. Maybe there's some stuff here. Maybe there's a little character. Totally how I draw my characters. Got to give him a stick because classic stick salesman. You know, maybe there's some stuff like this or something in the background, some textures, I don't know. But yeah, so I'm doing this all in grayscale, right? I kind of have, again, I have a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like because I've done this a lot. But so here's a thing. There's maybe a tree, whatever, trees, boom, bing, bang, boom. Okay, so here's a quick environment. Let's get rid of this thing here. Okay, so now when I make it that, boom, environment, right? And it's the colors aren't perfect, but the values are right? So the point I'm trying to make is that colors aren't really that big of a deal. I think what ruins a grayscale painting is when you're applying colors that then mess up the values. If you here, let me try this. I've never done this before. Copy, paste, edit, tonal correction, hue saturation. I'm going to drop the saturation all the way down. So if I'm going to color this painting, right, I would probably just use overlay layers and color layers. But in theory, you could do it a lot of different ways. So for example, if you want a red sky, you could add some red, right? Or maybe a yellow, I don't know, blue sky. Why not blue sky? Blue skies are nice. Maybe some red. Maybe we have some green grass, right? You could start a painting like this, where you're just, again, I'm using a light touch here. I am trying to mix colors. I'm trying to get some gradient going on, because gradients look nice. Colors typically are just pure red, pure green, pure blue. So you could get pretty far like this, right? But even past this, right? Let's just say you want to add pure color. You can come in here if you know that like this is a dark shape, right? Here's my big tree in the foreground, and you know this is a dark shape. You can add any color in here, right? You can just take a color. It could be a purple, right? You can make it purple. It'll work. And for the most part, I mean, you know, it's nice if you mix. So, for example, if you have blue sky, maybe you mix stuff with blue, right? So you can mix some blue in here, right? Mix some greens, right? Maybe you want some purples, mix some purples. Doesn't really matter. Maybe you want some reds. You can mix some reds. But again, I'm not going to go like this, right? Because that would be that's not the same value. But I could grab this color of red. That's the same value. So let's add some of that in there, right? You can go pretty wild in you know, if stuff is the same value, you can get away with a lot, right? You know, this color of green doesn't really matter. There's lots of colors of green. It could be grayish. It could be not gray. It could be more yellow. Whoops, I'm getting a little light. You know, as long as it's the same value, you can get away with a lot. Again, it's not going to look, you know, super harmonious or anything, but it can, right? Especially if you start mixing colors. If you're separating, say, light and shadow into warm and cool, right? Like in this painting or this one, right? You're going to go a lot further, right? Obviously, I'm not really doing warm and cool. I'm just picking whatever color. But you could. I mean, you can get away with a lot of different colors just by sticking to the same value, right? Because the overall structure of the painting is staying the same. If I want to add a yellow right up here, I can add a yellow. Is that yellow? Yeah, it's yellow. Right, I can add a yellow up here. Right? Why? Because it's the same value, right? And the more mixing you do, the more harmonious the colors will be, right? You're going to get more, you know, consistent colors, and, you know, you can do a lot. That tends to be the way that I think about colors. It's not, you know, I oftentimes start with colors because I want to establish a mood or a color palette or there's something I'm aiming for, right? If I want to start with a sunset, then I'm gonna pick sunsetty colors, and I just kind of plop those in at the start, and then I can build up from there, right? If I want to add green in this painting, I'm not like, you know, I'm not just gonna pick a green and start plopping it in, right? I'm gonna pick a green that matches this value, right? So I could actually just pick a green, like any green, literally that same green I just picked, and I could just brush it on top and color pick a new thing, right? I did make it a little brighter, right? You can see the value, but it's, even if I darken it, it's now the same value, but it can blend in. You know, maybe you do the same thing back here, right? Same bright green, but this time you lightly paint it back here. You know, you can now have a new green back here, right? You have a new green up front, right? You can add colors like that, especially if you start mixing, right? Because if this whole painting is affected by this purple, by using opacity with green, you're now blending the green into the purple, and you get this new color. In this case, it's a very gray blue, which looks green in contrast with the purple. So that's the thing. Right, so you can add additional colors in there, but I do like to start with some color. I don't know. It's just the way I like to work. But you can also just ignore it. You can just turn it off and start painting in grayscale. Obviously, this is a very oversimplified composition, but you get the idea. Yeah, I mean, I think doing hue stuff, you know, hue masks and all that, I think that's a not a bad way to do it. I don't know. I guess the way I like working is I actually do like using layer modes. But I try, again, I don't spend a lot of time on the rough thumbnail. You know, I'm not going to make the values perfect. I oftentimes will get pretty far. Like, you know, I might, here, for example, I might slap in some color dodge and be like, you know, like, oh, this looks kind of cool. And maybe I get some lighting, you know, and I establish a color palette that I like. Maybe I, you know, use an overlay mode, and you know, maybe I'm gonna add a vignette or something. I'm gonna make this look super funky, but that's okay. You know, maybe I get you know, okay, whatever. Here's the painting I want, right? Now I'm just painting on a new layer, right? I'm literally painting directly on top, opaquely, nothing, right? I'm not using any layer modes because I didn't need to go super far, and you know, I didn't need to be super precise. I was mostly just trying to get the color palettes. So that's something that I do a lot, is where I try, if I'm going to use layer modes like color mode or overlay or color dodge, I try to use them early. And I try to use them early because I like to be able to know what colors I'm painting with. I like to have more control. And so by using them early, it's more of like an exploration phase where I'm just getting the color palette and maybe some of the value structure or something. But from there, I can kind of just start painting, because I already have the colors on the page now, right? You can go pretty wild with stuff. Yeah. I just need to color a lot, and I am currently learning. Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing, if I had to order, I concepts for color, I would say values first, right? This is values, and then I would add temperature, right? So instead of actually getting to the color of the color, like, this is an orangey, halfly saturated bright orange or something, like I would just be like, it's warm, right? So I'd be like warm, warm/cool, right? And if you're doing like, a big swath of light, right? And you could be a cool light, it could be a warm light. I would just focus on like, is your light, lights can, maybe as a start, but you don't have to have purely warm and cool. Technically, warm and cool is a concept all into itself. Color is relative, right? If this is a cool color, the very same color but gray is warmer, right? It's still warm and cool. Whoops. Right? And then this color is even warmer yet, right? So warmest, warmer, cooler, sorry. Warmest, cool, and then medium, right? So color is relative in that sense. But if you have like a warm light and a cool shadow, like you can do a lot with just contrasting temperatures, right? Shadows are being colder. The actual colors don't matter that much. I mean, they, again, if they're if your colors match your temperature structure and they match your value structure, you're set. Like you're basically, it's hard to go wrong, right? So the actual color of the color is less important in my opinion. That's kind of my hierarchy of it, and then yeah, last is color. So 1, 2,